us. You couldn't stop us if you tried.
Join us and celebrate 75 years of breakthroughs at MDA75.org.
We are VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, W227BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM.
At a time when children are in crisis, the Kids Mental Health Foundation envisions a future where mental health is a vital part of growing up, and support starts with all of us. At home, at school, at practice, everywhere kids are.
If you're at school having a bad day, you just don't want to do anything.
I just get these thoughts like, do better. All my little emotions in my head is just running crazy. I don't know what to do.
As a teacher or coach, do you ever feel overwhelmed?
He's just in tears in the huddle. I was like, what's wrong? And he's just like, I'm just so frustrated. And I didn't know what to do.
None of my undergraduate studies talked about mental health.
Teachers need tons of help.
The Kids Mental Health Foundation is the leading organization promoting mental health for children in the U.S. and has free tools and information developed by experts.
Having those resources is the same as the CPR class to me. We're trying to save a life here.
Check out kidsmentalhealthfoundation.org to get started.
I lost my 19-year-old son Johnny to suicide after he became psychotic from using marijuana, vapes, and dabs. He experienced cannabis-induced psychosis and thought the mob and the FBI were after him. Dabs are products with concentrated, high-potency THC, the chemical in marijuana that gives users the high feeling. One hit on a dab pen today is the same as smoking 50 old-fashioned joints back in the day. Use of THC before the age of 25 causes changes in brain development, a loss of IQ points, and lower motivation. Studies show THC increases the risk of anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia in developing brains. I lost my child, but it's not too late for yours. Educate your teen on the harms of marijuana.
A public service message from the nonprofit Johnny's Ambassadors. Learn the risks and get the facts at johnnysambassadors.org.
Are you tired of static? Wish you could take your favorite Virginia radio stations with you wherever you go? Then you need to discover the power of streaming. That's right. You can now easily listen to the Virginia Talk Radio Network for insightful discussions and local news.
From the VTRN News Center, I'm Bill Trefiro.
And groove to classic hits on Rewind 1039. All from your smartphone, tablet, or computer. No more fiddling with the dial. Just download your favorite radio app. Search for Virginia Talk Radio Network or Rewind 1039, and you're ready to go. Stay connected with your community.
Good morning. This is Kimberly McBroom in the WDBJ 7 Newsroom with our Virginia Talk Radio Network News Update.
And enjoy the music you love, anytime, anywhere.
Every move you make.
Streaming the Virginia Talk Radio Network and Rewind 1039. It's that easy. Virginia Talk Radio Network, Rewind 1039. Now streaming.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
If you've been listening to the VTRN Sports app or 93.3 FM over the weekend, we thank you, including for the bevy of games we have and will continue to air in college football, college basketball, Olympic sports, and yes, the NFL coming up starting this coming Thursday at 7:30 p.m. when we have a battle for the studio, a studio showdown, if you will. We have TJ's team.
It's looking a little bit like those Dallas Cowboys is peaking in the 90s.
Going into Philadelphia to take on Trey Lyles' guy,
Saquon Barkley,
as he loves that soundbite in the morning warm-up, weekdays 7 to 8 a.m. And then we've got college games, pro games, double headers, triple headers, pretty much every Sunday, except there'll be some quadruple headers, tons of game action. But
time to take a detour in the fast lane.
We also have new changes at VTRN Sports because come September 1, yesterday, we made the decision it took a while. We weren't quite sure if we were going to pull it off September 1, hence the lack of real lead up to this. There are a lot of technical things going on behind the scenes to make this happen, but our staff, phenomenal job. Trey, Phil, all those behind the scenes, kudos to them, and Melinda as well, working with Trey to make sure this all sounds as smooth. We had an opportunity to get ESPN back. And, when we took over and left ESPN at the Virginia Talk Radio Network a few years ago, one of the impetuses behind it was, ESPN had lost a lot of their core programming options. Departures like Mike and Mike, that show just ceased to exist as Mike Greenberg wanted to do more of the TV thing, and Mike Golick would have liked to have continued it, and they tried it with Wingo and Golick, Trey Wingo, but then ESPN had layoffs, and all of a sudden that fizzled out, and Mike Golick's spot got knocked out, and then you add into that other departures over the years, Scott Van Pelt, or Van Pelt and Rosillo, Stephen A's kind of come on and off ESPN radio. Colin Cowherd, way back in the day, was there, but it's been a decade or so since he's been on ESPN radio. Way back. Dan Patrick was part of that, as was Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon. But all of the big names had largely departed. And at the time when we took over with CBS Sports, Pat McAfee was, on the network, although it wouldn't last for very long. Eventually, they had the opportunity, and we were very ecstatic to partner with him, but to grab Rich Eisen, who, of course, as you might know, left recently, which was formerly CBS Sports Radio, now Infinity Sports Network. But he left, and for the end of the year, he's on both. But eventually, he's going back over to ESPN Radio. All of a sudden, that brand started to get stronger and stronger. And when you combine that with Virginia Tech football and basketball play-by-play, if there were other schools where we could partner, we'd certainly welcome that opportunity on our end. We're all for as much local play-by-play as we can potentially monetize and make a way to make it worth our while. And the metrics have been very fortunate to back us up on that. But you combine that with college football games of the week, which we'll still have, NFL games of the week, Thursday night football, Friday night football this week in the NFL, Sunday afternoon and Sunday primetime games. And then I'll be transparent as well. I think part of the reason from our perspective, and I don't know how everyone else in the media sees this, but about 2.5 to 3 weeks ago, back in August, the NFL and ESPN essentially had a merger. ESPN bought the NFL network, but the NFL all of a sudden is taking on a 10 to 15% equity stake
15%
in ESPN. And as that transpired, that's the one that, if anybody's wondering what kind of pushed us towards ESPN, and now we are fortunate to be a partner with ESPN Radio, the thought that went into the back of my mind is, how long until ESPN Radio just carries the NFL when the NFL has an ownership stake in that particular group and network? Like, there may not be preferential treatment everywhere from the NFL, because I fully believe on the television side in particular, the NFL is going to monetize as much as they possibly can. And remember, they are a minority investor in ESPN. They wanted to succeed, but the NFL still will benefit plenty financially from their partnerships with Fox, CBS, NBC, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Apple TV, anybody else that wants to get in on the action. The NFL welcomes all comers, because even if it fractures and it makes it hard for people to consume their games, there's enough demand and the metrics back it up from a TV viewership standpoint, that's going to be the case. But it's kind of like college football. The college football playoff is also on ESPN Radio, and we'll be fortunate to have access to that now going forward. But, ESPN invests so much into college football and owning the rights to the college football playoff. Even the games that are on TNT, they've been licensed out by ESPN to TNT. So ESPN controls them, and then they farm them out to whoever's willing to pay a certain amount to get those costs. And so ESPN is invested in it. And the way it was made out to us through conversations, I won't mention names to keep it confidential, but ESPN was always going to have the college football playoff as an option, because, the radio version is kind of a throw-in when you consider that the majority of the money the college football playoff makes is from the television side of things. But if you're going to throw it in and you've got access to that, great. So it only strengthens our play-by-play here at the Virginia Talk Radio Network, and we are very fortunate to have that. Even if things may change differently, and there may be some things that we don't get to carry over the long haul, we're very fortunate to have the great partnerships we've had with Westwood One, Compass Media Networks, Sports USA, of course, the Virginia Tech Hokies, and having a great partnership with them to carry not only football and men's basketball, but as many women's basketball and baseball games as we can fit into our calendar. And we get to work around some of the other programming, but having all that makes it strong. So that's kind of an into the weeds look, but we figured we needed to take a detour here in the fast lane, because, it's kind of the most obvious elephant in the room of what happened to your programming options. Well, there's your explanation.
Exactly. And I think being represented by ESPN, I mean, you talk about a huge sports brand. ESPN, worldwide leader in sports. I think this is a huge move for the company. And quite frankly, look, we get to keep the Rich Eisen show. That was one of the most popular shows that people listen to on our station. Whenever I talk to people, they're like, hey, did you listen to the Rich Eisen show on y'all's station today? I was like, oh yeah, always, man. And so powered by ESPN Radio, I think that's huge for us. And
yeah, I mean, and you're right. I mean, I guess we're going by VTR and sports powered by ESPN Radio, but it's worked for us to have that. It was a chance to strengthen what we offer in sports and bring you as much as we possibly can. And ESPN of 5-6 years ago, I don't know if it was that appealing. In fact, it wasn't, because there were inquiries made from both sides about a partnership, and it just didn't make sense at that time to structure it, because ESPN's brand wasn't what it is now, where former Virginia Cavalier Chris Canty will book in the morning warm-up with Trey Lyle and Ty Tracy in morning slots on VTR and sports powered by ESPN Radio. They now have Rich Eisen, and Eisen was gone from our prior partner, Infinity, and before that, CBS Sports Network. He's on over at ESPN, and you hit the nail on the head, TJ. That was one of the most popular shows that we had when we were able to obtain rights to that, and that's part of the reason why we added it. So just for context, in case people are wondering what in the world happened, how did this come to be, there is a detailed explanation from us here in the Fast Lane.
Yeah, and I just want to say this, Ed. Look, this is a perfect time for businesses to come in and be a part of this big sponsorship, especially when sports is starting. If you are a small business owner, this is the time to join our station, because we have football galore. We're going to have basketball galore when October starts. And if you come in with us, we are pushing your advertisements on the Dallas Cowboys and Eagles game. That's one of the biggest rivalries right now in the NFC East. I'd say that's bigger than what Dallas and Washington used to be. We got the Chargers and Chiefs on Friday. We have the Virginia Tech and Vanderbilt game this Saturday. That's a huge game. And I promise you, if you are a part of our network, you get to be a part of those staples. Because look, this isn't just, we're only going to be on the Fast Lane and morning warm-up. No, we are constantly playing. And I promise you, businesses benefit from that.
Indeed, no doubt. And if you want to be with us, fastlaneedlane@gmail.com or fastlaneedlane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And you can even put in the email subject line, I want to work with TJ, or I don't like Ed, but ... I'd like to partner. Can TJ be my guy? Absolutely. TJ would be delighted to be your guy. If you want me, no problem. I would be delighted to work with you as well. But let's be real here. There are a lot of people that like TJ. There's some people that like me and some people that don't. It just kind of comes with the territory from how I do things in the job. But wanted to give you an update on that. Meanwhile,
after Ed's potentially unnecessary detour, let's get back on the road in the Fast Lane.
And by the way, if you know somebody who's been involved in a situation where the screeching of tires did not result in a favorable outcome because they were in an auto accident, trostlaw.com and 777-HURT is what you need to call, or who you need to call, and speak with the team at trostlaw.com or Trost Law, as they were, 777-HURT and trostlaw.com. But what was interesting, speaking of shameless self-promotions here in the Fast Lane, Thursday night football last week, not this past week, but last week. Yeah. Cincinnati, Nebraska, in front of is your girlfriend a Taylor Swift fan?
Yeah, she's a huge Taylor Swift
fan. Okay, sorry. In front of your fiance, favorite player or favorite team.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift. She was there with Travis Kelce, who went to Cincinnati, and Patrick Mahomes, who's also got ties, obviously, to them. And that game, Cincinnati, Nebraska. It started what was a trend that we saw throughout college football and the big national games. We saw it on Friday night, former Liberty Flame Caden Salter and Colorado. We saw it in the first game of our game slate over the weekend, Saturday, our lone game Saturday, Texas and Oklahoma. Texas and Ohio State. You heard it, obviously, in all those games. You heard it Sunday, Virginia Tech and South Carolina. And last night, after the opening drive for North Carolina, you heard it for the Tar Heels as well. This theme of offenses, which I think we're going to see this now more than ever in college football. What we saw over the weekend, look at our local teams in the backyard. JMU was the exception, but they returned, even though he was injured at the very end of last year, Alonzo Barnett, who started out on fire, 8 for 8 passing, rushing success, throwing success, obviously. They were fine. It was against Weber State, though. Take that for what it's worth. But pretty much everybody else had slow starts. Now, there were exceptions to this. The opening drive of the game for a lot of these teams looked good and crisp. But then after that, you had a lull for a lot of teams. Liberty, 18-play opening drive of that game.
Yeah.
But after that, kind of meh offensive performance. Like, they really didn't get anything going until CJ Bazille's turnover at the end of the first half, and it shortened the field for Liberty, and they were able to finally, for them, get on the board and tie it up at 7 going into the break. But they really didn't blow it open against Maine until 3 touchdowns in the last 10 minutes and change in the fourth quarter. It really wasn't that.
I told a friend of mine, I was at Clemson LSU, and I was sitting next to a friend. I said, Liberty and Maine being the closest game at this hour was not on my bingo card.
Correct. It wasn't. And not for a lot of people. And we were sitting there in the press box watching it, and the kind of the sentiment that popped in is, as the game goes on, you're like, is this really going to happen? Like, is Maine really going to upset Liberty? Because my eyes, I know it's kind of odd to be quoting Michael Lombardi after North Carolina's disaster last night. Our buddy Michael Lombardi from the Daily Coach and the UNC GM. By the way, condolences to the team at the Daily Coach. Their co-founder with Michael Lombardi was George Raveling, the great coach who passed away earlier today. And we'd like to extend our condolences to Michael Lombardi and his family, but also the Raveling family and the Daily Coach and what they've done. We do a lot in terms of partnerships with them. But the thing of that is, it's who's in the lead and who's in control. Liberty was not in the lead until late fourth quarter, but they were in control over the second half of that game against Maine because they were winning the battles in the trenches. That strip sack from CJ Bazille that forced the short field and allowed Liberty to tie it up going into halftime. It at least put Liberty on even footing. And at that point, they could just lean against Maine and believe that the dam would eventually break. And it did. The effort was there the entire time for the Flames. But the trend of that was, we saw it with Liberty. It wasn't until the fourth quarter where the offense came together. South Carolina, Virginia Tech. The stats were actually even between the Hokies and the Gamecocks.
Yeah, it was.
We were there. You and I were both there in the press box.
Yeah.
South Carolina opening drive of the game looked great, but give credit to Virginia Tech's defense. They buckled down and adjusted, and really it wasn't until the fourth quarter when South Carolina had taken the lead on the punt return for a touchdown to make it 17-9, 17-8, and it was a double-digit game. Kind of loosened things up for South Carolina.
Under a new defensive coordinator with Virginia Tech, by the way, I felt like he handled most of that game very well, containing Sellers until they lost gas in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no question. I mean, you kind of saw that. You're going to have one bad call as a coach, and it was Sam Sifkas putting Brown, the cornerback, on Nick Harbor, who is, that guy's a freak athletically. Like, we saw him in person. Our photographer, Hudson, who was on the sideline for the game, and we'll have some photos from that up at Fast Lane, Ed Lane soon, but he did great photography work. He actually caught a picture. He did a bunch of shots of the Nick Harbor initially ruled a touchdown, but not in the end zone. And I thought the ball started to move watching the replay on the big Jumbotron up there at the stadium.
I thought so too.
I thought, and as soon as the ball moves, then you have to reestablish possession and get your feet down. The problem was he couldn't get his feet down because he was out of bounds. So it nullified the. I think it was the right call. But he's an athletic freak. But then he got his own later in the day. Like, it was just one matchup, but it broke the dam open. And I think a lot of that was the Virginia Tech defense held in there as long as you could expect. And eventually, like you said, TJ, they just ran out of gas. Even Virginia, the day before, that Saturday night, in a game you probably weren't overly involved with because you were at LSU Clemson, which was another example of offenses, having some scripted series success early like Clemson. But once that went away, it was a real struggle. Virginia, they were kind of the opposite of that. It struggled early against Coastal, but tip your cap to Tony Elliott and Des Kitchens because they struggled and they made the adjustments. And then once it clicked for the entire game. And I think that's kind of what you saw. When Virginia found their offensive rhythm with all those new pieces, it clicked against Coastal Carolina. Again, this is not Coastal of Jamie Chadwell when they were great. This is Coastal, typical G5 program that gets ravaged by the portal every year.
Exactly.
So keep that in mind.
And Chandler Morris left early in the game. Keep that in mind as well.
He did.
UVA lost their starting quarterback, and they still dominate.
And they still, the volume of players, tip your cap to them. Like, there's a lot of ways to be critical of Tony Elliott, and I'm not saying Virginia's going to do well. Last year they started 4-1, and it kind of felt smoke and mirrors like, and it really was because they came unhinged toward the back half of the season. It was pretty much a disastrous finish for the Hoos. But you look at the trend across college football that jumped out to me is offenses either finally got going. You saw that with LSU in the fourth quarter against Clemson. Liberty in the fourth quarter against Maine finally got going, pulled away. Virginia, once they got going, they were good.
Yeah.
That's where the time-tested axiom that we did the TrostLaw.com Fast Take on earlier today at Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram comes in. The whole idea is the biggest progress is made between week 1 and week 2. And a lot of it is just going out there and finding a way to execute, doing the little things correctly, because that's really what you're going to need to do. Like, here's an example of this. Liberty, we touched on them as well. I was at the game with Ty Tracy from the morning warm-up, 7 to 8 a.m., VTR and Sports App at 93.3 FM. But it took Liberty a while to get going. And a lot of it was just self-inflicted mistakes. You're not lined up correctly. Some new people in particular were not doing their job with assignments. There were a lot of myriad factors that we'll get into later in the week in the Fast Lane. But I thought Reese Smith, the wide receiver for Liberty, summed it up really well on how they expect to make that jump from week 1 to week 2, and how what you get now in college football with the transition of the rosters is you're going to see a lot of sluggish offense in the early portion of college football seasons, typically that first game after the opening drive. You can script the opening drive. North Carolina did that last night. Boy, did it look great. And then after the opening drive, script deviated. They didn't do anything until they got a touchdown in garbage time. And it was, 41-7, 48-7. I don't know. I had gone to bed at that point. It was not worth listening to the end of that game on the VTR and Sports app. But here's what Reese Smith had to say about what they noticed at Liberty as well, that whole axiom of how teams are supposed to, expected to, and should make that biggest improvement from week 1 to week 2.
Yeah, it was plain as day. Like, the second half, we played like we should have, put up a lot of points. We play like the first half of the game's not ever even close. So we've really, really emphasized that, going in today being a heavy install and good practice, we put a lot of our important periods up front, because that's what we know we have to do. We have to start fast this week, because if we don't, this week can, they're a good team. This game can get out of hand if we don't come out and be firing on all cylinders. So Coach Chadwell and the staff has, put the practice and priority is putting our trade periods and our team periods first. So I think that'll help a lot.
A lot of it is, again, the caliber of players you have and what they're after and what the motivation is. I think, honestly, at a place like Liberty and some of the smaller programs where NIL exists and rev share exists and players get paid, but it's not to the degree of places where it's literally financial decisions. I think you're more likely to see that message get through of how you make the big jump from week 1 to week 2, because in addition to getting paid at certain places, the hardest thing to measure, particularly with 18 to 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, is pride in your work and pride in what you do. And for Liberty, you could sense it with what Reese Smith said about, the game really shouldn't have been close, and if they did what they should have early, it would not have been an issue. I think that's the sentiment that there are at least a number of players in vocal leadership positions at Liberty that understand that axiom of how to get better from week 1 to week 2. Meanwhile, how are we going to get better in the Fast Lane? Great, you asked. We're going to get our experts' takes. Not Liberty. We know how John Manson's going to roll. We're going to try to get him on when we can have full undivided time with him as opposed to covering the Commonwealth. So Manson is tomorrow along with Ben Cates of newsadvance.com. But we're kind of doing the Monday thing on Tuesday today in the Fast Lane, covering the Commonwealth next. JMU, Virginia, Virginia Tech. All of that's still to come right here on the VTR and Sports app, and Ask That Smart Speaker, open VTR in Sports.
It's so worth the drive to big savings at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. Shop local and save more with exceptional service and selection. Your search stops here with over 900 pre-owned vehicles to choose from, plus a huge selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles, all in one location. The Sheeler Motor Mile gives you more choices with pre-owned cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. More than any other dealer in the area, plus exceptional service, selection, savings, and financing options, and top dollar for your trade. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume with 11 new car brands and over 900 used vehicles, all in one location. And we're proud to support our local schools and community. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier car dealer, locally and family-owned for over 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
You're seriously considering buying investment property, but you're unsure of all the steps. That's where we come in at Brownstone Properties. We're navigating different home investment journeys daily, just as we've done for decades. From buying with one of our licensed realtors to a full-service property management after the purchase, Brownstone Properties will walk with you step by step on your real estate investment journey. For a free initial consultation, call or visit us online today at brownstoneproperties.com.
Relaxing in a radiant sunroom, enjoying the breeze in a screen room, or the sun on the deck. No matter the weather, customize how you feel whenever you want. Call Collins Custom Builders. All sunrooms, screen rooms, and decks are built by Collins employees, many with decades of experience, and some who've been with Collins Custom Builders since 1989. That means workers who embrace accountability and are committed to crafting your vision of the perfect sunroom, screen room, or deck. See some of their projects at collinscustombuilders.com, then call Collins Custom Builders.
AM radio provides always-on news, sports, talk, traffic, and weather reports. It also delivers vital emergency information when your community needs it most. A new bill in Congress would ensure AM radio stays in your car, because when cell and internet services are down, this free emergency service is critical. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress to support the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
Looking for that one place to find out information you want that used to be in the morning paper? How about trying the LynchburgPortal.com? On-demand news from Bill Trefiro. On-demand weather daily from VTRN in-house staff meteorologist Matt Ferguson. Classic hits from the 70s, 80s, and 90s on the Rewind 1039 stream. The best talk shows and CBS News every 30 minutes on the WIQO and WGNN streams. The best play-by-play and the Fast Lane with Ed Lane on the VTRN Sports WVGM stream. A business directory from the Lynchburg Business Alliance. Up-to-date events from the Lynchburg Tourism site. Great discounts from InsaneRadioDeals.com and many more ideas on how to promote your business. And it can all be found on the LynchburgPortal.com. That's the LynchburgPortal.com.
The grit of the sidewalk crunches under your shoes as you walk up the driveway to your newly renovated home and as you lean against the new Chevy Suburban in your driveway. That's when you realize that listening to VTR in Sports changed your life. Your business messages, visually written, resonated with our audience and brought you new relationships and clients. That's the power from partnering with VTR in Sports. Access that power, then enjoy the fruits of our labor. Start now. Email info@VirginiaTalkRadioNetwork.com.
Virginia's source for sports. VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
So whenever I ask the question, did you see that on social media? To me, it's always 50-50 because the algorithms are going to spit different things out for different people. You got to understand that the algorithm of social media in general is designed to get you to consume the product as often as possible. That's why, if you're I'll get political for 10 seconds here. If you're super right-leaning or super left-leaning, then they know that, and they'll give you either super right-leaning or super left-leaning content because you either, yeah, I love it, or ooh, I hate it. But whatever it is, you keep coming back because psychologically they know you want more of it. So that's kind of the idea of it. I'm not generally a troll guy, but I will at least give you this one. Carolina football, August 24th. Tweeted out. Excited to showcase our program this fall on @Hulu. More information to come. To which, 17 hours ago, the response from TCU football. When does episode 1 come out? I mean, that is... that's right on point. That is about as on point as you get. So we can't get any better on that explanation, but we can get a lot better on our insight and analysis with
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
With Shane Metlin of DNROnline.com. Shane, JMU, Alonzo Barnett comes out. He looks crisp running the ball. He looks crisp throwing the ball. This coming off of the ACL injury he sustained at the end of last season. Could it get much better for JMU considering the opponent is not exactly a power that they're going to be playing this year, but they looked pretty crisp going into this game, or at least coming out of this game, and they started fast and were pretty effective throughout the entire game, at least when the score might have been in doubt or the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a perfect performance, but it was just about what you would want from the opener for JMU. Like they, similar to last year's first couple weeks, they didn't show much. I think knowing they've got Louisville coming up, they got the Liberty game coming up, so they were able to get a fairly comfortable win without showing a lot of the playbook. And they got to test Alonzo Barnett. He threw the ball really well, which you kind of expected he would do that from seeing him in practice and stuff. You knew he could still throw it. He took a couple hits. He ran the ball. Like, it was just about as perfect of a comeback, if that's how you want to put it. Like, his first game back, that was just about as good as you could have hoped for as far as both his performance and the way he was tested with that knee injury.
Your colleague Katie Harper's article, and the quote that stands out is, quote, "He's just a warrior," end quote. What effect did the Alonzo Barnett return have psychologically and vibes-wise on this JMU team, and in particular the Duke's offense?
I think it's had an effect, like, really this whole preseason. It was always a little bit in question for us in the media and fans and everything, exactly how much he was going to play week one. I think the team knew all along he was their starter, and yeah, I think it definitely had to have an effect on how they perform. Just in that, like, if you have a guy who goes through that, who put that much work into his rehab, who did everything absolutely right for the past 9 months, I think when your quarterback is that kind of leader, that's got to have some effect on the rest of the team. And they came out and played about as well the first 25 minutes of that game as a team could play. I mean, obviously there was a little bit of a letdown once they had the score in hand, but it was as good a debut as you really could have hoped for.
How much of Back to Reality is coming this Friday night at 7:00 at Louisville?
That's the question. I mean, I think Louisville's the best team they've played in recent years, but we'll find out how good they are pretty quickly if they really are like a playoff contender with this game. I'm not saying they have to win this one to continue to be a playoff contender, but we'll find out if they're competitive with that level of team. But it's a group of guys. Like, there's a lot of people in that locker room who haven't lost to a Power 4 team before. And they look across, George Pettaway talked about this yesterday. Like, they look across the line, and it's guys who have played in the Sun Belt, or he played in the ACC. So I think that's one thing about the transfer portal is there's a little bit less, like, at least from the players' point of view, there's a little bit less of like, there's a big divide. But because these are players that they've seen on the field before, whether it was at, Coastal Carolina, ODU, other places. I think they have some confidence going in, but we'll find out how much that's earned when we get on the field on Friday.
If they get blown out, and I'm not trying to paint worst case scenario, but I'm going to go out on a real limb here and say that I don't think JMU is going to blow out Louisville the way they did North Carolina. I have a little more faith in Jeff Brom and Louisville as a program than I do in Mack Brown and what they were doing at North Carolina. But in the event Louisville blows out JMU, is that the type of scenario where there might even be a flush it type aspect because of the gap between those two teams if Louisville was playing to their potential?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, talking to you in Lynchburg, I think, what happens this week and how they respond to it's going to be a big storyline going into that JMU Liberty game in a few weeks. Jimmy will have a bye week, and whether they win, lose, get blown out, any of those things, how they respond to that in what's going to be like a really critical non-conference game if they want to be in the mix for that playoff spot. I think that's almost, to me, almost as interesting as the result of the Louisville game is like how they end up responding in a couple of weeks.
Shane _DNR, Shane Metlin _DNR, and DNRonline.com. Shane, great to chat with you as always. We love having you in the fast lane, and we'll speak again next week.
All right, thanks.
JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor. Jerry Ratcliffe, Hootie for the Virginia Cavaliers. started a little sluggish, but once they got going, they looked fantastic, even with the Chandler Morris injury against Coastal Carolina. How much of that is Coastal Carolina is not what they were at their heyday when Jamie Chadwell was coaching them? How much of this is a Virginia team that Coach Tony Elliott, and he said afterwards, has been very glad to have the investment financially in the program, which has led to the upgrade in talent?
I think it's a little bit of both. And Coastal Carolina, you're right, they're not what they used to be. I think they'll do okay in their conference, but I don't think they're ready to take on Power 4 teams at this juncture. And there's no mistaking that Virginia has vastly improved from the last 3 years, and you nailed it. And Tony Elliott did too when he thanked all the Virginia powers that be for investing in their program with bukus of money, and it showed Saturday night. They had depth all over the field. They kept rotating offensive and defensive linemen, secondary guys, played 4 running backs, had a ton of wide receivers. They have talent all over the field, and for the first time in a while, they have multiple playmakers that can take it to the house. And a solid quarterback who, he had a pretty good night, and he only played essentially one half of football. So there's no mistaking this is a much improved Virginia football team.
Hootie, you mentioned the improvement for the Virginia Cavaliers, and the schedule lines up very well for them. How much are they exhaling that the injury to Chandler Morris doesn't appear to be serious, and they go on the road to an NC State program that has historically given them lots of fits?
That was a huge announcement by Tony Elliott at just before lunchtime today that Morris is okay and expected to go. They're going to need everything they can muster to beat NC State on the road, I think. That's been a tough place for Virginia over the years. And Dave Doran, usually when he has a mediocre year or a poor year like he did last year, he finds a way to bounce back strong. They have a pretty good offense, an experienced quarterback, some dangerous wide receivers, and a pretty solid defense. So, if they hadn't had Morris, if he hadn't been healthy, I don't know that I would give them much of a chance to win down at Raleigh. But with him, I think they've definitely got a chance. It's a close game. I think it's 2.5 or 3 points by the odds makers, and usually get 3 for playing a home game. So it's kind of a pick 'em game. I expect that even though it's a 2 conference teams playing a non-conference game, I think it's going to be like most ACC games are. It comes down to the nitty-gritty late in the fourth quarter, and that's what I expect Saturday down in Raleigh.
Jerry, beyond that game in a couple of weeks, next week they're slated to get Cam Robinson back as the linebacker, and they believe he'll be ready to play as early as Stanford. That's what Tony Elliott indicated earlier today. How much of an exhale is that from Virginia that they've now got the offense and the overall pieces that it doesn't seem like they have to feel like they have to rush Cam Robinson back, making them more lethal over the course of the season?
I think it's very important. They wanted to make sure that they took their time with him so he would be healthy for, like you said, the remainder of the season instead of taking a risk and making it worse. And there's make no mistake about it, he's the leader of that defense, and he's this was a year that he's been pointing to be his breakout year. He was left off the preseason All-ACC team, and he made some comments that we're about to see the real Cam Robinson. So it's going to be crucial for them to get him back for the long haul. And but like you said, they have so much depth on that side of the football that they've been able to survive without him and bring in some guys with some new blood to get some minutes. But there's no question they need him in there for the big game.
Hootie, last one, and you and I have both been, whether it's been snarky or flat out cynical of some of the attendance figures for Virginia home football games. Saturday night, was it as loud and full and energized as it seemed to be observing the game from a distance?
It was loud. We had a running joke. They announced there's 46,000. The attendance is 46,000. We all laugh in the press box because we know that number is not accurate, and they've been doing that for years. And I was reminded by a UVA person today at the press conference, those are tickets distributed, right? And I said, yeah, I'm well aware of that, but, you guys still announce it as attendance is 46,000. But, it was a healthy crowd. I'm guessing there was probably maybe mid-30s or late 30s there. Pretty decent. I know they gave away a lot of tickets trying to get fannies in the seats, and I applaud them for doing that. They need to do that and try to get more people in the stadium. But it was a very loud crowd and excited, and they had a lot to be excited about. There was a lot of flashy, dramatic plays like Cam Ross, a 46-yard pass to him, a 48-yard pass to Terrell Harris, a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. So there was a lot for fans to get excited about, and it's kind of fun for a change. We haven't seen that in Scott Stadium in a while.
No doubt about it. It's always fun to get the insight as well from Jerry Ratcliffe, who joins us in the Fast Lane. Hootie, thank you for your time. Great to chat, and we'll recap the NC State game back in our normal slot next Monday.
Awesome, Ed. We'll see you then.
Just for you haters, left hand up the Commanders.
That was intentional, by the way, an audible being called so that we can still get the great insight of our next guest, Candy Waller, Madam President of Bowie TV Sports. See, Wall, when we last spoke last week, there was an exhale about the Terry McLaurin contract extension having been finalized. How much of a different exhale has been uttered now that Micah Parsons is out of the division in that shocking trade that, to many, makes it seem like this is a even more solidly a two-team race in the NFC East between the Eagles and the Commanders?
I mean, I think that, it's kind of like everybody's happy. Micah Parsons is no longer in the division, but it's like, hey, everybody, still let's pay attention to this, because guess what? Everyone in the division has to face the NFC North this year, so they still got to see Micah Parsons at least once. And if you have playoff aspirations at all, there's a chance, very high chance, you will absolutely be seeing him in the playoffs. So, of course, it would have been much better if Jerry Jones would have gotten him out of the conference overall. So it's one of those things where it's like kind of bittersweet. Like, hey, you don't have to see him twice a year, but this year you're going to have to see him at least once. And if you have playoff aspirations, you may see him for sure in the playoffs.
Candy Waller, Madam President of Bowie TV Sports, with us here in the Fast Lane. Meanwhile, Lake Lewis was on with our own Trey Lyle discussing how the vibe was pretty quickly back to business when it came to Terry McLaurin being back in the Washington Commanders. How worried, if at all, are you that because McLaurin missed time in the offseason with his contract holdout and has just gotten in the last week or so into practice, that the offense may be a little sluggish to start, something that we saw quite a bit of in college football and frankly do see a lot of in the early season NFL?
It sounds like everybody is super duper positive about where Terry is overall, but he looks to be in great shape. Yes, it was very much back to business as usual with having him out there. He's been doing a lot of prep, film study, just overall, just conditioning, overall training in the building. But we all know it's not like being on the grass, the real game atmosphere. So it remains to be seen. We'll see on Sunday. But he looks to be in great shape and ready to go. He does not seem concerned, and the team doesn't seem concerned.
Candy Waller with us here in the Fast Lane. We're never concerned about the quality of her insight and analysis. It's always impeccable. Washington gets ready to host the Giants, a game that begins at 12:30 p.m. right here on the VTRN Sports app and 93.3 FM this coming Sunday. Seawall, what are your expectations for how this game unfolds? Is it as tight as a couple of those games last year? Do the Commanders come out on fire? How do you see this intra-division rivalry going to start the season on Sunday?
I'm thinking it's going to be very, very interesting, especially at the line of scrimmage. You may see both offenses kind of kind of getting the dust off, if you will. But the line of scrimmage battles are going to be very, very interesting. I would also keep eyes open on whomever is tracking and covering Giants wide receiver Malik Neighbors. There's a lot of talk about this Commander's secondary, so that is going to be an opportunity for them to shine if they can shut him down. But the line of scrimmage battle, this offensive line, this new look offensive line with the Giants defensive line with the addition of rookie Abdul Carter is going to be something to watch for certain.
Seawall, thank you for your time and insight today in the Fast Lane. We always love catching up with you and appreciate it. We'll be following you at CEO Seawall on Instagram, Seawall SE on Twitter, and Bowie TV Sports on both those platforms as you and your colleagues have coverage for opening weekend of the NFL.
Thank you so much, and I'll be talking to you guys again soon.
Indeed, our pleasure. Candy Waller with us here to wrap up part one of covering the Commonwealth. When we return, that's when we'll connect with David Cunningham of TechSideline.com. Plus, Chase Folsom on NASCAR at Darlington. See if he can speak into existence. Chase Briscoe for a NASCAR championship, as I've got that 28-1 ticket out there. And a little Lynchburg Hillcats as well. All that still to come here in the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app and Fast Lane Ed Lane, however you listen to podcasts.
Mark Dalton here with Terry Subaru. Love to drive? Then you'll love the all-new 2025 Subaru Wilderness family. These cars are built for adventure with symmetrical all-wheel drive, rugged capability, and legendary Subaru reliability. These stylish vehicles are ready for anything. Plus, every new Subaru we sell comes with an exclusive Terry Promise, a lifetime powertrain warranty. Visit us on Forest Road in Lynchburg or browse our inventory online 24/7 at terrysubaru.com. Terry Subaru. You'll love our cars.
Around the table with Vicky. Just like gathering around the dinner table with loved ones and friends, we're here to share stories, insight, and inspiration. When I designed that daytime center, we went back way in the 50s. And so we've got some old-timey pictures on the wall, with, talking about root beer and old Coca-Cola.
Because that is what makes daytime so special. We have so many people that come into the property and they're like, I would have never imagined this being here. I've never seen anything like it. I can tell you from running social media pages, we put out posts about it. I have people from all across the nation writing in and say, hey, is there anything similar to this in
Cleveland,
my
Ohio,
state of Oregon
or
or whatever? And that makes us feel really great.
Pull up a seat and join our conversation. Around the Table with Vicky is my new local radio show and podcast discussing leadership, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, faith, and family. Saturdays at 10 a.m. on WIQO.
Hi, I'm Matt with Fleet Feet Roanoke. I've enjoyed working with Ed Lane and the Virginia Talk Radio Network. But when they sold their Roanoke station, I was skeptical the partnership could still provide value. Months later, I'm thankful that Ed took the time to meet with me, discuss the right solutions, and a plan to invite his audience to Fleet Feet Roanoke. Now we're able to build a connection with that audience thanks to Ed's creativity. Stop by and see us at Fleet Feet Roanoke to learn more. We'd love to get to know you.
Email info@virginiatalkradionetwork.com to start growing your business.
You're busy running a business. You don't have time for regular cleaning, much less big projects. So call Executive Maintenance. They'll handle everything from commercial janitorial cleaning to large projects like new construction cleanup, handyman work, and strip, seal, and wax for tile floors. They'll even pressure wash with the strength to remove graffiti and black tire marks, but gentle enough not to damage your building. So keep your eyes on your business and trust the commercial cleaning experts at Executive Maintenance. Visit executivemaintenancelynchburg.com and call them today.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
Summertime means hot temperatures, but hot deals are at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Check out great deals from the Lynchburg Hillcats, both general public and premium reserve tickets at the site right now. Try scuba classes from Aqua Trek Adventures. Plus, one of the best deals at all, Linex of Lynchburg bed liners, a $700 value for only $567. Hot deals during this hot summer at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
Time for a little nuance on this TrostLaw.com fast take. or this coming Saturday when the Liberty Flames take on Maine and Ethan Vasco trots out onto this field behind us for quarterback one of the Liberty Flames. It sounds from head coach Jamie Chatwell, who completely left the door open to the idea of other players seeing time at quarterback. That it's more of a starting as quarterback one as opposed to Vasco definitively being QB1, something he'll have to earn with this play.
It's so worth the drive to big savings at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. Shop local and save more with exceptional service and selection. Your search stops here with over 900 pre-owned vehicles to choose from, plus a huge selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles, all in one location. The Sheeler Motor Mile gives you more choices with pre-owned cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. More than any other dealer in the area, plus exceptional service, selection, savings, and financing options, and top dollar for your trade. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume with 11 new car brands and over 900 used vehicles, all in one location. And we're proud to support our local schools and community. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier car dealer, locally and family-owned for over 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the fast lane.
Did he see things the same way TJ and I saw them? Did he hear them the same way you heard them listening to our game coverage of Virginia Tech Hokies football on the VTRN Sports app, part of our doubleheader this Saturday, Oklahoma State and Oregon, then Virginia Tech welcoming in Vanderbilt for the home opener for the Hokies. That's where we will begin right now in
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth, a look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the Virginia Tech Hokies.
David Cunningham of TechSideline.com. He's at the Real D Cunna on Twitter and Instagram. David, a pleasure to have you back with us once again here in the fast lane. For Virginia Tech, defense looked much improved. Offense looks like there's plenty of room for improvement. They will get the old dreaded in grade back in elementary school. I'm familiar with that with my twin first grade boys, where in equals needs improvement, maybe even drastic improvement for Virginia Tech. And in special teams, they had their moments, but when you commit a penalty that results in a second kick that gets returned for a touchdown, that dings your grade severely. Is that a reasonable assessment of Virginia Tech's 24-11 loss to South Carolina?
Yeah, Ed, great to be with you. I think that's very accurate. I think the Virginia Tech defense was pretty darn good. Not quite A level, maybe, but probably close, at least a B. Considering the Hokies really shut down Lenore Sellers and his legs, something that not everybody has been able to do. Just look at Clemson last year, allowing 166 yards to him on the ground. The Hokies did a really good job of containing him, caging him, and that didn't really become a huge factor in the game, with the exception of his touchdown to start the game, a 15-yard run. You know, he had, I think, a 16-yarder at one point later in the game and a 13-yarder at another point where he kind of escaped the pocket. But I thought the Hokies defense did a really good job otherwise of containing him, and they sacked him 4 times. That's really tough to do considering how mobile he is. Granted, other teams have sacked him previously, and his offensive line isn't very good. The problem, Ed, lies in the other 2 phases. Like you said, the offense, very inconsistent, had some big plays, but when Kyron Drones, the quarterback, is 1 of 13 with 2 picks and a sack in South Carolina territory, that's not very good. Just very, very choppy from the offense, kind of like a 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And then you hit the nail on the head with special teams, man. You know, you have a gunner not in the right spot on a punt that leads to an illegal formation penalty. Shane Beamer has you re-kick, and your guys are tired because they just covered the kick already. And you ask them to cover it again, and you get beat for a touchdown. And that's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. You can't have that. And that was a good punt by Nick Velsistis, too. And John Love knocked in 3 field goals, including one from 57 yards. But all in all, that unit is still very frustrating, I think, for Virginia Tech fans to watch because, you do some really good things and then you do some really dumb things. It wasn't too long ago, this time last year, which, funny enough, against two Hokies are playing this week, that Tech had 2 guys with the same number on the field on special teams that cost them 3 points. You can't have those mistakes, especially considering how veteran of a coaching staff this is. You've got to do that stuff correctly. And Virginia Tech seems to get bitten by that once or twice every game.
Yeah, I mean, it's those little things that add up. And, you mentioned the Kyron Drones issues and the offensive challenges. Is it Kyron Drones struggling to process everything offensively and therefore, there's some accuracy issues there? Is that just who Kyron Drones is as a quarterback where, to me, it looks like he can throw darts, which are great for deep balls, but maybe when you need to, kind of do touch passes on a dump off or something over the middle with some arc on it, but not too much, that's where he really struggles?
Yeah, I think a little bit, Ed. I think part of it is he doesn't have a ton of time in the pocket. I mean, this is a new offensive line, a lot of new faces, and he's still trying to get a feel for things. I don't know that his game is necessarily timing rounds. I don't know that he likes sitting in the pocket. He's gotten better at it, and I thought there were times where you saw him make some terrific throws. I mean, Aiden Green, Isaiah Spencer, Donovan Green had some really impressive catches. I think it's more just like the casual routine throws, the throws to the flat to a running back, or the throws over the middle, where he isn't necessarily airing it out, where it's a shorter throw. Some of those are just slightly off target. If they're in a slightly better position, that's probably a catch, and it's going for 10, 15 yards. So it's one of these things where I think he and Phil Montgomery, as the season goes on, will develop a better relationship, quarterback coach and OC to quarterback. And I think Montgomery will get a better feel for how Kyron, sees the game and understands the game. I don't know that it's all bad necessarily because I thought he did make some good plays. But at the same time, if he doesn't have a lot of time and his guys aren't necessarily catching everything, makes it pretty difficult. Like I look back at that play, it was the chop block penalty the Hokies had called back. That was a 28-yard gain that they ended up having called all the way back. He got sacked later. That was his sack in South Carolina territory. And on the same play, the Hokies had an unnecessary roughness penalty that booted him even farther back. So it's not like he's necessarily being helped by some of his teammates here, but he has to do a better job. And Brent Pry and Drones both said as much.
This Saturday on the VTRN Sports app at 3 o'clock, it's Oklahoma State at Oregon. That's our doubleheader game 1. Game 2, of course, is Vanderbilt against Virginia Tech, which is what we discuss right now with David Cunningham of TechSideline.com, and specifically asking you this, David. Must win. Is it too hyperbolic to call it must win for Virginia Tech given it's week 2? Or is that reasonable given that if you lose another game to a Power 5 team outside the ACC, you may write the season. You may even be able to exceed the 6.5 win total that Vegas put on Virginia Tech earlier in the offseason and held with them. But the confidence of the fan base would really start to wane?
Yes, it's reasonable, Ed. I think it is most definitely a must-win game. And I don't like to use it, and I think a lot of people don't either, us in the media. But the Hokies have to win this game. Not necessarily from a pure records standpoint, but like you said, the trust in the fan base. You're talking about a program that is better than this, much better than this. And I think Brent Pry has hired some good coaches this offseason. I thought he did a pretty good job of restructuring where Virginia Tech is. But the bottom line is you have to win games. And I think a lot of people had penciled in this South Carolina game as a loss. And guess what? The Hokies probably should have won that game if they do 1 or 2 or 3 other things correctly. It wasn't like they got blown out. You want to see a blowout, look at North Carolina last night. Virginia Tech was in that game. I think that made some Virginia Tech fans encouraged. But if you go out here and lose to a lesser opponent than South Carolina in Vanderbilt, a team that you did not play well against for 3 quarters last year, and yet still were leading with 2 minutes to go, and yet still didn't win to open the season. I mean, this is as must-win as they come. If Virginia Tech starts 0-2, that's a problem because you are looking at a losing record at the end of September straight in the face. If Virginia Tech can get one this weekend and play pretty well against NC State at the end of September, you're looking at at least a 3-1, if not a 4-1 start. And I think the fan base will rally around that. But man, if you slip up here, and Brent Pry knows it, I mean, this is a guy in Diego Pavia and this Vanderbilt staff that they messed with the Hokies last year. They got them completely out of whack, as Frank Beamer would say. If you mess up this Saturday, you are going to be in some deep trouble with the fan base in terms of trying to earn their respect and their hope back. And I don't say that mildly. This could be a real problem if Virginia Tech slips up this week, because the road is not easy as the year goes on.
Well, let's pray that that doesn't happen for those that want to listen to Virginia Tech football on the VTRN Sports app, and of course for us carrying it so the games are more exhilarating and exciting. David, will find out what happens, and we'll hold off your prediction for the TechSideline.com's TSL preview podcast later this week. In the meantime, thank you for joining us in the Fast Lane.
Much appreciated. And I will say, I feel okay about the game. I know that was pretty negative, but I feel okay about it.
Yes, indeed. I would too, if you're a Virginia Tech fan. David, thank you for your time. We will chat again soon.
Sounds good.
David Cunningham with us here in the Fast Lane on W227BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville, Southside.
Now to NASCAR.
Chase Folsom of FrontStretch.com with us here in the Fast Lane. Chase, great to be speaking with you. Did Chase Briscoe announce himself as a legitimate contender for a championship in NASCAR with his victory at Darlington over the weekend, or was it more taking advantage of a strong car, which is what you would expect to do for a playoff driver, but maybe not transferable to what we'll see over the back half of this chase?
I think it's a little bit of both, because on one hand, you expect Joe Gibbs Racing drivers to contend for a championship. So the car certainly helps. We've seen the 19 car be great at Darlington in the past, but the driver still has a job to do. And I think the Southern 500 in 2025 may just be remembered as the night that Chase Briscoe broke into stardom. The playoffs are about hitting momentum at the right time, and he just might have done that Sunday night.
You know, I am thinking my fingers need to remain crossed as somebody who's got that 28-1 ticket on Chase Briscoe to win the NASCAR championship. It would be delightful if that happens. My next question, though, on this is the challengers to Chase Briscoe. Not all of them are going to be eliminated in this round. Only 4 of them will. But how much of, I don't know if you call it beta breath, but maybe heavy breathing is going on at Penske, Hendrick, and the rest of Joe Gibbs Racing, more so Penske and Hendrick, given that this start to the chase was hardly a banner night for those organizations.
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, you look at a team like Penske and Joey Logano, our defending champion, albeit through the way that the playoffs present themselves, but he is still the defending champion. He had a very bad night at Darlington. I mean, he's going to Gateway. It's a track he's been really successful at, but the Penske cars outside of Blaney have not been good at Bristol. So I think Logano's in trouble. And then you look at the Hendrick camp as a whole. They were pretty much pedestrian the entire night. Best car finishes 16th, I believe, is where Chase Elliott wound up, maybe 17th. And they're going to Gateway, which has been their worst track by far with the next gen. So I think both of those camps are probably scratching their heads right now, especially Hendrick with how good they've been at Darlington. And they're going to have to figure something out, because maybe not this round, but next round, certainly they're going to be in danger if they don't get their heads back on right.
So you referenced Gateway this coming weekend. Chase Folsom of FrontStretch.com, who's hanging out with us today in the Fast Lane. Of those drivers that had disappointing showings at Darlington, which ones are under the most pressure to reverse what may not be a track that works in their favor, but gives them an opportunity to claw out of pressure this weekend?
I think you actually look at a guy like Josh Berry. The Fords have been historically strong at Gateway. He's affiliated with the Penske cars, who have been, you could say, the best in the 3 years that we've gone there with the next gen. And he had a very good opportunity Sunday night to surprise some people in the open round of the playoffs, qualified third, and in about 30 seconds, it all went away. Now he's going to have another opportunity where his affiliate cars have been really strong to get it pointed back in the right direction. So Josh Berry is a guy in that sense that I would certainly keep an eye on.
Josh Berry, the one to watch in the eyes of Chase Folsom, with us here in the Fast Lane. We'll wrap it up on this chase when it comes to the race at Gateway this weekend. Of the drivers, and I guess this is wide open in the championship as you've found in a while, but of the drivers that are in this spot, who do you believe will come out of Gateway going, I don't like my situation because Bristol can be a bit chaotic and I don't run well there, and I didn't take care of business when I had a chance at Darlington and at Gateway?
I'm going to say two guys. I'm going to say Shane Van Gisbergen, because Darlington has been a great oval for him. I don't know that Gateway is going to suit Trackhouse very well, and Trackhouse has been pretty bad at Bristol with the next-gen car. And Alex Bowman, who, had a great regular season, pointed his way into the playoffs, and then it all fell apart at Darlington. They were downright awful, even without the pit road mistakes. And again, Hendrick has struggled at Gateway, and he's been really the weakest of the four Hendrick cars at Bristol. So I could see Alex Bowman being a guy leaving Gateway, scratching their heads, trying to figure out what they have to do to maybe even win their way into the next round at Bristol.
Well, we get winning insight always from Chase Folsom of FrontStretch.com. Chase, thank you for joining us today. It was great to chat with you, and we greatly appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me as always.
And last but not least, or maybe least, the Lynchburg Hillcats.
Jason Prill, broadcaster for the Lynchburg Hillcats. Jason, 4-3 were the Hillcats on their most recent homestand. Is it still trudging in place, trying to find their groove, or the fact that two of those three losses were close games, 3-2 and 3-1 on Wednesday night and Friday evening, a sign that the Hillcats, while their pitching their hitting may be hit or miss, pun intended, their pitching has been stable enough that this is starting to round into a form to a team that can make noise in the playoffs?
Yeah, and I think that was a great sign this past week against Fredericksburg. The Nationals are in first place in the North Division. That is most likely the team Lynchburg will end up facing in the first round of the postseason. And to take 4 out of 3 against them and to be close in the other 2, one of the games, Lynchburg threw in the towel. They put in a position player in the 9th inning in a tie ball game to preserve their bullpen because it was a doubleheader. And so they gave away that game because they didn't need the win. They didn't really care. Lynchburg knows they can beat Fredericksburg now. They can go into that series with confidence, and they can go in knowing that they have a chance to make it to the championship series, which is really all we were hoping to see coming out of that series against Fredericksburg. So I think it's just a great sign. I think everybody's boosted or has their confidence boosted. So I think it's a lot to build off of going into next week.
Not what would you like to see, not what would our own TJ Wilkerson like to see. What would the Lynchburg Hillcats locker room and players like to see most at Delmarva starting this evening that can boost them as they get ready for the playoffs starting next Tuesday?
I think it's just complimentary baseball. It's the idea of the lineup hitting at the same time that the pitching's going. That's been the hit or miss issue with this team this year. It's either one or the other. The pitching's really good or the lineup is really good. Even in the first half when they clinched the postseason berth, it was done mainly on the backs of pitching and a couple timely hits. And so they just really need to piece a full series together, 5 or 6 games where the offense is playing well and producing, and the pitching staff is contributing just how they have been all season long. And if they can piece it all together this week against Delmarva, which is the perfect tune-up series for the postseason, that will give them a lot of confidence going into whoever they face next week.
We're confident the inside is solid and great. From Jason Prill, he's at JasPrill19. Jason, great to be speaking with you. We appreciate your time today in the Fast Lane.
Absolutely. Anytime, Ed.
Indeed. Jason Prill with us here in the Fast Lane. Now I got to change it up since it's not VSiN's Make It Rain. It's back to being with Coleman and Douglas, joined in progress on ESPN Radio as we bring you VTRN Sports powered by ESPN Radio after today in the Fast Lane. And we're back tomorrow, 5 to 6.
Yeah, the locker room seemed upbeat. The ping pong games have still been going on, and we're focused on Philly.
That's code for